Good afternoon. Today I will start a new chapter from geography, resources and the development. What is a resource? The question starts with the resource. Resources are those which are found in the nature, in the environment, and then when it is needed to satisfy the human beings. Now resources are what? It is found in the environment which is used to satisfy our needs. The resources are that everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs, we call it as a resource. It is technologically accessible, economically feasible and culturally acceptable, can be termed as a resource. So resource means what? Whatever we are finding out in the environment, and when it fulfill our needs, to fulfill our needs, we call it as a resource. Now you can see this picture, page number it's given here. One page, the first page, this diagram is given, the flow chart is given here about the resource, and the triangle, one of the thing is given, that is how interdependent relation between the nature, technology and the institution. This is given in the triangle, and the flow chart is given here very clearly, that resources can be further subdivided into many other things. Now the process of transformation of the things available in our environment involves an interdependent relationship between the nature, technology and institution. How resources are very closely, they are attached with one another. Human beings interact with nature through technology and create institutions to accelerate their economic development. Now human beings, we are quite interdependent with the nature thing, and how we are producing the things through technology and some of the create institution to accelerate their economic development. Do you think that resources are free gifts of the nature as is assumed by many? They are not. They are not the free gift. Resources are a function of the human activities. The first thing, when we take from the nature, those resources, when the human beings are acting on it, or when we are taking it into the use just to satisfy our needs, we call it as a resource. Resources are a function of human activities. Human beings themselves are essential components of the resources. They transform material available in our environment into resources and use them. Now here some classification is given, how resources are classified. These resources can be classified in the following ways on the basis of origin: biotic and abiotic. Biotic is living things, and abiotic it's a non-living things. On the basis of exhaustibility, it is renewable and non-renewable. Resources can be further subdivided. In a flow chart it's given, you will find out figure 1.2 how the resources can be renewable and non-renewable. Renewable, which can be used again and again. Non-renewable, which once we use and then it is finished, they're exhausted. On the basis of ownership, how the resources are used individually, community, they are using, national and international, how resources are used by the nation and the international. On the basis of status of the development potential, develop stock and reserve. Now some of the resources are kept in a stock, in a reserve, how it is used. Turn a page, page number 2. Now here it's given the types of resources. In the flow chart you have seen already, they are describing over here on the basis of origin. Now biotic resources, that is a living thing. These are obtained from the biosphere and have life such as human beings. These like flora, fauna, fisheries, livestock, etc. These are all taken under biotic, which we call already as a living thing. Abiotic, all those things which are composed of non-living things are called abiotic. For example, rocks and metals. So here the difference is given, biotic and abiotic. On the basis of exhaustibility. Exhaustibility means it is finished. Renewable resources, the resources which can be renewed or reproduced by physical, chemical and mechanical process, we call it as a renewable or replenishable resources. For example, solar and wind. It is given here some of the example: solar and wind energy, water, forest and wildlife, etc. Once they are used, it can be used again and again. The renewable resource may further be subdivided into continuous or flow. That is given on page number 1 already. You have seen figure 1.2. Non-renewable resources. Non-renewable resources, these occur over a very long geological time in the ancient time. From minerals and fossil fuels are example of such resources. These resources take millions of years in their formation. Non-renewable things, as you have read just now, those things like rocks and metals, they are formed millions and millions of years it take to form. Some of the resources like metals and recyclable, and some like fossil fuels cannot be recycled. Once they are used, they cannot be used again and again, so it is already exhausted. On the basis of ownership, on the basis of ownership, resources, how it is used. Individual resources, now these are also owned privately by the individuals. Some of the resources which are used privately, that is given over here. Many farmers own land which is allotted to them by the government against the payment of the revenue. Now some of the portion, some of the farmers, they are having land which is already allotted by the government. It's given here. In villages, there are people with land ownership, but there are many who are landless. As you have read in the Palampur chapter in the eco, that land are, some of the land are already given, and some of the land without the people are having without land. Now urban people own plots, houses and other property, plantation, pasture lands, ponds, water in wells, etc. Some of the example of the resources ownership by individual. Now some of the resources are individually used, and some of the resources are ownership by the individual. Make a list of the resources owned by your household. Now resources you have read already, the things which are found in the environment when it is needed to satisfy the human beings, we call it as a resource. Now community owned resources. Now some of the resources can be used in a community, in a group. There are resources which are accessible to all the members of the community. Village commons. Now some of the things which are used by the all community society people, like here it's given grazing grounds, burial grounds as well, and village ponds, etc. Public parks, picnic spots, playgrounds in urban areas are de facto accessible to all the people living here. Now community people, they can use such a places like grazing grounds, burial grounds, village ponds, etc. in a community they can use. Now national resources, some of the resources which are already used by the country. Technically all the resources belong to the nation. Some of the resources are already belong to the nation. The country has legal powers to acquire even private property for the public good. Now some of the resources which are used publicly, you might have seen roads, canals, railways being constructed on the fields owned by some individual. Now some of the things, some of the places, some of the things which are constructed, and it is already owned by the individuals. Urban development authorities get empowered by the government to acquire land. All the minerals, water resources, forests, wildlife and land within the political boundaries and oceanic area up to 12 nautical. Now some of the things you have read just now, these resources, minerals, water resources, forests, land, they are used individually either by a country or by the other country. Then here it's written, the land within the political boundaries, some of the resources within the country they are used, and some of the resources which are found in the ocean up to 12 nautical miles. It's a kilometer, the distance is given from the coast, termed as a territorial water, and resources therein belong to the nation. Now some of the resources which are found in the country, the distance within the country, it is available, and some of the things, resources which are found in the ocean can be within the country or can be in the other country. Now, international resources. There are international institution which regulate some of the resources. Some of the resources are used by other country. The oceanic resources beyond 200 kilometer of the exclusive economic zone. Now there is a distance up to where you can have the resources belong to open ocean, and no individual country can utilize these without the occurrence of the international institution. Now some of the resources which are not used within the country but by the international. Then on the basis, page number 2, the next heading, on the basis of the status of the development. Now potential and developed resources are given, stock also. Potential resources, resources which are found in a region but have not been utilized. Now there are some resources in a country which are a big stock but it is not yet used. For example, the western parts of India, that is Rajasthan and Gujarat, have enormous potential. These Rajasthan and Gujarat having a number of potential resources and it is not been used. So here it's given, but so far these have not been developed properly. In the Rajasthan and Gujarat, there are some of the resources like wind and solar energy which is still not been used by the country. Now developed resources, resources which are surveyed and their quality and quantity. Now some of the resources are used with its quality and quantity have been determined by the utilization. The development of the resources depends on technology and level of their feasibility, that is conveniently or possible. Now come to the next heading, stock. Whatever the resources are kept, it is in a stock. Materials in the environment which have potential to satisfy human needs but human beings do not have the appropriate technology to. Now some of the resources are kept in a stock, huge, and they have been used with the technology and other things by the human beings are included among stock. For example, water is a compound of two inflammable gas, that is hydrogen and oxygen, which can be used as a rich source of the energy, but we do not have the required technical know-how to use them for this purpose, hence it is called stock. Now some of the resources are kept in a huge quantity, that is stock, but yet people do not have such a technology to use it. So here it's given. Now come to the next is reserves. How much some of the resources are kept in a reserves. Reserves are the subset of the stock which can be put into use with the help of existing technical know-how, but their use has not been started. Yet we know the knowledge, but still in our country some of the resources are not used. These can be used for meeting future requirements. If these resources are taken into use, can be used in the future also. River water can be used for generating hydroelectric power, but presently it is being utilized only to a limited extent. Yet our country is producing a number of hydroelectricity, more and more, but it is kept, but still there is a lack of utilizing. The water in dams, forests, etc. is a reserve which can be used in the future. Now water in dams, as you know, dams producing the electricity, forest, etc., and it is kept only for the future. Next on page number 3, development of the resources. Resources are vital for human survival as well as for maintaining the quality of their life. Now it was believed that resources are free gifts of nature. Some of the resources are already given over here. As you have read just now, it is a free gift of nature. When people are utilizing it to satisfy their needs, we call it as a resource. As a result, human beings use them indiscriminately. Now some of the resources are used by the human beings with indiscriminately, and this has led to the following major problems. If the resources are used enormously, more and more, then what will be the result? There will be a lot of damages to our resources. Now, for example, depletion of resources, when resources are already becoming less for satisfying the greed of the few individual. When some of the people, greed you call as a lalchi, this can be used, this greedy people, they are using more and more resources, so once it will be depleted, it will be less. Accumulation of the resources in few hands, which in turn divided the society into two segments, that is half and half, not rich and poor. Now some of the resources are reachable with the poor people, and some of the resources which are used by the rich people, and some of the resources are not reaching to the poor. Indiscriminate exploitation of the resources had led to the global ecological crisis. No, more and more, if the human beings are using the resources, then what will happen? It will be a crisis, such as global warming, ozone layer depletion, environmental pollution, and land degradation. These can be harm to the resources. Now, an equitable distribution of resources has become essential for a sustained quality of the life and global peace. If the present trend of the resources depletion by a few individuals and countries continues, the future of our planet is in danger. Now, if just now you have read that more and more resources, if it is used, then what will happen on this planet? There will be a danger. Therefore, resource planning is essential for sustainable existence of all the forms of life. Sustainable existence is a component of sustainable development. That's why it is said, when the resources are used, it should not be used more and more. Then what will happen? It will harm to the environment. Now next is sustainable development. Here some lines are given. Sustainable economic development means development should take place without damaging the environment, and development in the present should not compromise with the needs of the future. Now here it's given the sustainable development, which means the development should be there but without damaging the environment. Now next is Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit, that is started in the 1992. In June 1992, more than 100 heads of the states met in Rio de Janeiro. It's a place in Brazil for the first international Earth Summit. The summit was convened for addressing urgent problems of the environmental protection. Now this summit, it had been established just to protect the environment and socio-economic development at the global level. The assembled leaders signed the Declaration of the Global Climatic Change and Biological Diversity. The Rio de Janeiro Convention endorsed and the Global Forest Principles and adopted Agenda 21. Now you will read Agenda 21 for achieving sustainable development in 21st century. Now what is Agenda 21? It is the declaration signed by the world leaders in 1992 at the United Nations. Now Agenda 21 had started by the United Nations in 1992 conference on environment and development, which took place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It aims at achieving the global sustainability. You have to see that how they have achieved by this global sustainable development. It is an agenda to combat environmental damages, to protect the environment, poverty, diseases through global cooperation or common interests, mutual needs, and shared responsibilities. One major object of the Agenda 21 is that every local government should draw in its own local agenda. So Agenda 21, as you have read, it started in Rio de Janeiro, it is in Brazil, just to protect the environmental things. Now next day I will start resource planning.